Hello, and welcome to the English with Colin Podcast, a podcast for English language learners. My name's Colin, I'm an English teacher in Tokyo, and if you're looking to improve your English skills and gain more confidence in your ability to communicate in English, you've come to the right place. In these episodes, I'll provide you with short conversations in English that cover a range of topics, from everyday situations to more specialised subjects. These conversations are designed to help you practice your listening skills and pick up new vocabulary and grammar along the way. Regular listening practice is key to improving your English, and I hope this podcast will become a valuable resource for you on your language learning journey. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation. And remember, the more you listen, the more you'll learn. This is episode 12, and in this episode we're talking about living in a small apartment in Japan. Hey Sue.
Hey.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. Today we're going to talk about living situations in Tokyo. So if you come to live in Japan, and specifically a big city like Tokyo, chances are that your first apartment is going to be quite small.
It's going to be tiny.
It's going to be tiny. The first apartment that we had in Tokyo was about, what do you think, 40
square meters.
40 square meters.
And that was big.
Relatively, yes. We had friends who, when they visited our apartment, they were amazed at how big, that we had a separate bedroom. Because many small apartments, your living room is your bedroom. So you use a futon, and you just put the futon away when you wake up in the morning, and your bedroom becomes the living room. So it's this kind of multi-use of space. People would come, and we had a dining table.
We did.
Which sounds like quite a normal thing. If you come from Europe, North America, the idea of not having a dining table is kind of crazy. But yeah, so 45 square meters maybe. And that was in Shinjuku, so we were quite central.
Very central.
It was a very convenient place to live in. What are your thoughts about? We don't live there anymore. What was your experience of living in such a small apartment?
I think the first time I went in, when I arrived in Tokyo, it was a shock, a little bit of a shock, the space.
Or the lack of space.
The lack of space. But with time, you get used to it.
Mm.
And what you start to do is you start to think about the space. What is it that you can have in that space?
How you can use the space.
Yeah, exactly.
Or what fits the space.
Yeah, so we would start to think about, okay, so we have so much space for clothes, or we have so much space for kitchen stuff.
Well, we have so much space. We have a limited amount of space.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Because if you say we have so much space, that's very different. So we have a limited amount of space for clothes. We have a limited amount of space for, what was the other thing you said?
For kitchen.
Kitchen stuff, yeah. So yeah, you have to make very clear decisions.
We have to make clear decisions about what we wanted, and if we were really going to use it, everything had to be functional. Yeah.
So yeah, if we were going to buy something, we didn't have a kettle.
We did not.
Which, I mean, I'm from the UK. We are famous for tea drinking. So having a kettle is a fundamental part of the kitchen. But we didn't have a kettle. We didn't have an electric kettle.
No.
We had a kettle that we could put on the gas hob if you wanted to boil water. But we didn't have an electric kettle because we didn't have a place to put an electric kettle.
No.
That's another thing. If you ever see pictures of a small Japanese apartment, the kitchen is what kind of surprises a lot of people because there's just no space to prepare food.
No.
So there was literally zero kind of what we would call like a work surface in the kitchen. The kitchen was the gas hob, then there was the sink, and then there was the drying rack for the sink. And that was it. There was nowhere to chop vegetables or prepare food. And we had a little electric oven, very, very small kind of toaster oven, I guess. And we had to put that on top of the refrigerator.
That was on top of the fridge.
Which I don't think it's supposed to. I don't think you're supposed to stack these things the way we did, but there was nowhere else to put it.
There was nowhere else, no. So you started thinking about what you need and if you're going to use it. There's no splurge. There's no extras.
Right.
You really need to think about what you're going to do with this, if you're going to use it. If you can keep it, where are you going to put it? And sometimes it's, if we buy this, what needs to go out?
Right, you have this kind of one in, one out policy. That was especially true with clothes, I think. You couldn't just have 5 different winter coats.
No.
Because you just didn't have space. Winter coats are quite big, they're quite bulky. You had one, and if you didn't like it anymore, you can get rid of it and then get another one. But you can't just kind of stock multiple. So yeah, we've talked about it before, but Japan having 4 seasons, like there really is a big difference between the summer heat and the winter cold. You know, you're talking about a 30-degree swing in temperature. So you do need winter clothes and you do need summer clothes. And there comes a time of year where you need to make that switch. You need to kind of pack away all the winter clothes and bring out the summer clothes and then the opposite.
Yes, you can't have everything out. So yeah, you really need to think about what you have, because you don't want clutter. You don't want to be living amongst things. You want a space that feels a space that you want to be in.
Right.
And that is, trying to have as little as possible, so a lot of light can come in.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point about being in the space. I think the way that people live in big cities in Japan, especially Tokyo, is they have a third space. They have a third place, shall we say. So you've got your home, you've got where you work or where you study, and then maybe you've got a third place, which could be a coffee shop you like to go to. It might be a park that you like to go to, or a bar or whatever. But there's other place that you spend your time, because it can be... Sometimes people, when they have a small apartment and maybe it's not very well sort of tidied or whatever, it's not nice to be in that space. And they just want to go home and sleep and then get up and go to work or go to school the next day.
Yeah, because a small space is also more difficult to clean, if that makes sense. It's not that there's a lot to clean, but to clean, you really need to be moving things.
Yeah.
And these dust bunnies, they get everywhere.
What's a dust bunny?
Dust bunny. That's what in Miyazaki's movies.
Yeah, it's like little dust and hair and kind of little balls of... They
just go into a bowl.
Yeah.
And
I never saw them in Scotland.
No. We haven't seen them here, that we now have a bigger space. There's no dust bunnies. But
we also have an electric vacuum that kind of
maybe
handles a lot of that stuff. Right?
But in that little space, there were so many little kind of corners that all of this would just grow into a dust bunny.
Yeah. I think, again, sort of being organized, it's very easy to start piling stuff on top of, so you get stacks of things. Then it just becomes hard work. The more stuff you have, the more piles of stuff you have around your apartment. You want something, you can't find it because it's in the middle of a pile somewhere. So I think when we moved into a bigger apartment, we still have this kind of mentality of we really need to think about what we buy before we take it in, even though we're in a bigger space. And I think we learned a lot living in a small apartment.
We did, and we're very happy with not having too many things, with having what we're going to use, because I think we've learned that if it's just standing there and it's not being used, it's not worth it. Yeah. You didn't really want it in the first place. You
didn't really want it. You didn't really need it.
Yeah.
So it's a waste of money, a waste of space. It was a good experience. I wouldn't like to go back to live in such a tiny space, but it was necessary at the time. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the English with Colin podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation and found it helpful in your language learning journey. Remember, the key to mastering a language is regular practice. So make sure you listen to our podcast regularly and keep honing your listening skills. We appreciate your support and feedback. So if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for future topics, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. You can find our contact information in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to joining you again next time for another conversation in English. Until then, keep practicing and take care.